Over here, we're from MX5 Mania, and we import the yellow speed suspension. We'll just show you a short video in a moment, just the assembly procedure and just a little demo video. So yeah, enjoy it, and then I'll just show you the coilovers. And later on there'll also be someone who got on with the yellow speed FIA approved racing harness as well. Thanks.
Alrighty, Toyo Tire rubber frame. Obviously you distributed Toyo brand tyres. As you can see here from the second point and all other tyres around you, we've very recently become distributor of Nikko brand as well. So Toyo do everything from car to truck, Nikko, car and SUV only. Both brands made obviously both by Toyo Tire and Rubber Company. Right next to us here, as well as being a tyre warehouse, we also make rubber and auto parts for Toyota vehicles made here in Australia. So all the rubber bushes, boots, engine mounts and so on are all made here and shipped down to Melbourne for new oriented Camrys which are made here in Australia. Okay, so as well as a distributor tyre, we're also a local manufacturer. Okay. Toyo Tire and Rubber Co, Japanese-based brand, especially engineering-wise, both for the product itself and production. But like all tyre manufacturers, we have factories and tyre making facilities in many countries now. 2 in Japan, 1 in China, 1 in USA, and 1 in Malaysia. And we now source product from all of those factories. Okay. All the development, R&D, production area, engineering is still very much Japanese based. Okay. Look, as we go, or even at the end, please ask away if you've got any questions. Put your hand up. Happy to do that, even though it's a big group. Okay, a bit about the new product itself. Proxys R888R. Now, it's basically an evolution of the R888, and that was a motorsport tyre that was sold in Australia for nearly a decade. And around the world for probably a little longer than that now. Talk a bit about it. So, what they wanted to do in concept was keep obviously the positive or the best characteristics of the R888 while improve on the weaknesses of the R888 product. Okay, one of the real positives of the R888 was easy warm up. Basically meant it warmed up quick. Even when it was cold, it was actually a fairly controllable tyre. Now, most of you guys have driven on R-spec tyres. When they're cold, most of them have very poor grip levels. The R888 compared to most tyres was actually more forgivable, I suppose, more forgiving if you like. What they wanted to do too, and I believe this is why it took them quite a long time to develop the product, they wanted to meet the current European regulations for noise, rolling resistance and wet weather grip. Okay? So I actually don't know of another motorsport tyre in the market in Australia at the moment that meet those regulations. Okay? All tyres sold in Europe now must have a label like so. Okay? And there's minimum requirements they must meet to get that label. So obviously a big aim for that product was the European market, but it is a worldwide product. What I wanted here, and most of the other markets want motorsport-wise, was more faster lap time. Okay? That was our main aim. And how would they do that? More mid-corner grip, reduced understeer. Pretty straightforward, guys. More mid-corner grip, carrying more speed, faster lap time. Improved steering response, and making a bit more consistent tyre as well. So, which includes endurance as well. So that was their aim, and to be more consistent. Okay, so from a design point of view, it's actually quite hard because it's not like a slick tyre. We need a tyre that actually obviously meets those European regs, does actually work okay as a wet weather tyre, but has improved dry grip. So what did they do? They went from a directional tread pattern to this tread pattern here. Now, so an asymmetric pattern with one big circumferential groove. Okay, one big circumferential groove, these big sweeping grooves here, and you see they narrow right near the edge. Okay, so this is the part of the tyre that is, even in a really good setup, is most stressed under cornering. So they're trying to minimise flex here, but having enough groove area here to have decent sort of aquaplaning systems. The circumferential groove makes a big difference to that, but we still end up with a very big block here. So again, engineering-wise, it's quite difficult to minimise flex and improve dry grip while still having decent sort of aquaplaning resistance. Look, the R888 actually had a very good rep in tarmac rallies because it was, as far as a tyre to do both wet and dry, it was a very good compromise, and they wanted to keep that. So that, a lower groove ratio and a larger block, rib in the centre. Now the biggest change to the tyre really is the construction of the tyre compared to the R888. The big change was to go to a rayon case rather than polyester. Polyester is I suppose the most common material for casings in car, SUV, pretty much everything except truck tyres. Rayon is usually only used for motorsport or very high performance tyres, so much higher degree of stiffness and a steel side tyre. So basic idea is they wanted more footprint in mid-corner. Tread compound is actually identical to the R888. Okay, so engineering wise, a bit of a simulation we've got here. So same conditions, we have that improvement in contact area mid-corner. Okay, and that's a combination of a stiffer case and that tread design. So bigger contact patch, more mid-corner grip. Okay, that probably doesn't mean much to yourself, but that's the size range at the moment. And we're going to have from 13s to 20s, so a very big size range as we did the R888 as well. So probably by May, June, we'll have all those sizes in stock. Okay. But control tyre for you guys, 195 50 15. New South Wales dealer will be Gordon 11. Okay. I suppose the one disappointment most of you guys will have is they're obviously not available until mid-March. Now I'll tell you the reason for that. The deal was done. This was done quite late. Okay, so we order on production. We order, they make, they ship. So by the time we order, it's not going to be till mid-March till we actually have enough numbers for everybody. Okay, but then we'll have more than plenty for everybody. Alrighty. Okay, now just a control tyre, to me, the idea is obviously to give everyone an even playing field with tyres, okay, same performance. But to make a good, the fastest tyre is not necessarily the best control tyre at all. Okay, to me, the one that gives the best value, and I think this point here is really important. A control tyre has a very good big green tyre advantage, so for the guys with money can keep chucking new tyres and keep going quicker. That's not a good control tyre, that's an expensive one. So the R888 had an excellent reputation amongst users as a tyre that you could wear down to the wear bars or even below that and still get really good lap times and very consistent lap times. Which made it really good value for guys who weren't probably after the fastest lap times, but were after the best value out of a race style tyre. Being the same compound with a different construction, the R888R will be very, very similar. So that's why I see it as an excellent control tyre for this series. What makes a good control tyre? Reasonable initial cost, so not too expensive, marginal green tyre advantage, so even the guys who run their tyres right now will still be able to do good times on them. So just to give you an idea, with each heat cycle, a motorsport tyre grip level will drop off, some more than others. But as the tread depth decreases too, we do get a little bit of an advantage of less tread flex. So with a tyre like this, you might lose a little bit with each heat cycle, but you gain a little bit as you lose tread. So in the end, I know some guys who've done their fastest times on the old R888s that were pretty much on the wear buttons and had their butt they'd worn down to them. So the R888R should be a very cost-effective control tyre. But obviously the tyre has to have a reasonable wear rate as well. Okay, it can't be worn out very quickly and obviously be no use. The other thing is there's a lot of some motorsport tyres have exceptional wear rate, but have poor performance between heat cycles. So you'll have a tyre that has a lot of tread but slow. So that means again, everyone's looking for new tyres, although their tyres are completely treadless. That's not a cheap tyre, it's an expensive tyre. So, look, obviously my opinion, but going on what we know about the product, I see this product is really suitable as a control tyre for you guys. Okay. Alright, before we go on and talk about the test day, now the big change for you guys tyre-wise is going from a tyre that is a high performance street tyre, although a very high performance, getting towards a race tyre. 2 is what we call a proper R-spec tyre. Okay? Differences in tread pattern, construction. So you'd expect straight away to be fast, but obviously everybody's going to be faster. What I see the advantage is that most of you guys will, with a good setup, will be able to run until they're smooth and still do good times. Okay. Our test day, look, 15th of January, we were really lucky in that while it was pouring rain here in Sydney and the day before the weather was appalling here, we rocked up to Wakefield Park to have probably the best weather I've ever seen in Goulburn in summer. Amazing, eh? So, ambient temps 19 to 25. That was while we were testing. When I got there in the morning, I think it was about 14, but for test conditions, why it's really good is we have a very stable track temperature, so not a lot of difference track grip-wise. So that makes, we haven't got a lot of variation in the track itself. Okay, obviously this car behind us was the test vehicle, and thanks again to John Boston for his time that day. Look, it was actually a very enjoyable, very productive day, so let's talk about it. Okay, look, what was awesome, first session, we pretty much learned what the optimum hot pressures were, which was pretty much as I expected. You should be aiming 30-31 hot. Come in 32 max. Once it comes over that, grip level drops right off. Okay? So that's where you should be aiming, and that's really important to get your most from the tyres. Pressure build-up we had in 6 laps, 7 psi front, 4 psi rear. Okay, so that's the sort of pressure build-up. That'll give you an idea of your starting pressures too. Okay. Now, look, my guess would be the previous tyre you would have used probably a much higher hot inflation pressure. Mainly for the reason you got a lot more case deflection, and that pressure does help that a little bit as well. Okay, wheel alignment settings. Now, we're lucky enough to have some time to play around with this, and that's what the car started with. 2 degrees neck, 1.5 on the rear, a little bit of toe, front and rear, max caster. Okay? Now, the tyres that come off has told me that wasn't so good, and the pyros after the first session told me exactly the same. So, we ended up with just over 4 degrees, and that was on the working tyre, and that we ended up with temperatures were even across the tyre. So that tells me I want more. I want a bit more. Okay? But that's, so in reality you try at least 4.5, maybe even 5. Okay? That's where you should be aiming. And that, why this is really important, this is going to give you faster lap times, but this is going to use the whole tyre, okay? And give you best tyre life. Once you don't run enough camber, or you're overworking the outsides, the tyre life will be much shorter, okay? And the drop-off between heat cycles will be much higher, okay? Look guys, that's what we ended up with, and that's what the pyros told us, the lap times told us was exactly the same, okay? With the rear camber, that's one thing we did actually try against the clock, but the pyros told us more would be good anyway. So that's what we ended up with. Okay. Now, just a few photos just to show you what the tyres look like after you work them. Now, what you will get is, because we do have a big block here, you will get like a rubber build up here and accelerated wear on the leading edge, the trailing edge, leading edge, trailing edge of that block. Okay, and a build up here, so that's normal. That's obviously the working tyre, so the one that's working the hardest. Now, what is a little bit different that might concern you is we've got the transition here from the tread to the sidewall rubber. And what's really interesting here, you can see how far to start with we're working down the tyre. Okay, way too far really. Okay, again, it tells us we're working the outside of the tyre too much during cornering when we started the day. So yeah, if you see that, you shouldn't be getting that much abrasion on that part of the tyre. I've got another photo that shows you probably a bit of a better example, but that's what the car started looking at. And that difference in rubber is just where the sidewall and tread rubbers meet, so it's of no concern. Now, two examples. That's the tyre we're looking at here of this vehicle. So we're getting abrasion right down to where that little arrow is, which tells us where the trigger indicator is. So without using a pyro, that's telling me we're really punishing the outside of that tyre, mid-corner. And or the thing's got really bad understeer. But this is obviously a much better setup car, different size, but have a look, this is a size with a lot more sidewall too. It's 205/60/30 is quite a tall sidewall tyre for a small tyre. So it's actually much harder. You get a lot more sidewall deflection here, so you generally do need a lot more camber to stop that tyre rolling over. So, but see where this tyre is working, right to the edge of the tread, but not over it. So that's a much better setup, and it's not overworking the outside as much. So just, tyres will always tell you by looking at them what they're doing. The pyro just tells you quicker before you actually really destroy them. Okay? So the pyros aren't dear, probably worth getting one and playing around with them. So, and what you should be aiming for when you come in on the front tyres, especially, is having more temp on the inside than the outside, because they're running a lot of negative camber. So when you're running a straight line coming in the pits, we've got a lot more contact pressure on the inside, so we should have more temp there. If we've got a lot more on the outside, we're really punishing the outside of the tyre. Once we start getting it even, we're getting towards something that's starting to work. Okay. Look, the regulations do allow, there's a lot of adjustments in the car. Although we've got the control coilover kit, we've got camber front rear, caster, although I dare say nearly everyone will have the caster maxed. Toe front and rear, sway bars are free, damper quick adjustments, ride height. So there's still a lot of adjustments to play with to improve the car. Okay, just look, I'll finish off on this slide. I'm sure most of you understand a lot of this, but it's easy to lose yourself when you're testing sometimes. You come in, especially if you've had a bad session, and you'll change a few things. The problem is then you don't know what's working and what's not, whether that was good or bad. So always when you make a change, one change at a time and assess that. Look, again, the tyres will tell you what's happening, whether your setup's good and the car's good. Pyros tell you early. Eventually the tyre will get wear patterns to tell you things are good or bad. And obviously lap times is obviously what the ultimate we're aiming at. Okay, look, one thing a lot of people do overlook is plain suspension. Okay? Obviously cars have done a lot of work. Just a little bit of plain suspension can mean a fair bit of time on the track. Something you need to look at all the time. Look, one simple way of doing it I've seen is put the car on a hoist, put the wheels off, and someone had made this big long bar that actually bolted to the hub, and just hang off that and see what moves. There shouldn't be anything flopping around in, okay? What's really important here, too, last point, is that to get the best overall result, tune the car around the pressures that give optimum grip. Okay. Occasionally you might need to use pressures or increase or mainly increase pressures to change the balance of the car, but in reality it's a bit of a band-aid. Okay. You're not actually getting the optimum grip from that tyre. And I suppose one example with a front driver is if it's really understeering, you might pump up the rear to get to oversteer to try and get around the corner. It might help, but ultimately it's just a band-aid. Okay. You're always going to get a better result if you tune the car around the optimal grip and the pressure to give you that. Okay, alright. There's got to be some questions from everybody out there, especially about our test day and what we did. Actually, yeah, we managed to get through quite a bit. So, nothing.
Alright. Yep. How long has this been tyre been out for? Like how long have you been selling and testing?